tell them. Hey, guys, you're live.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, I'm Ron Hacker, the chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals, and at this time, I'd like to call to order the September 21st, 2020 meeting of the Town of Kiowa Island Board of Zoning Appeals. The Town of Kiowa Island, until further notice, is conducting all committee and public meetings over video conferencing, so that's what we're doing today. And this meeting is being streamed by the town on the YouTube channel. And members of the public did have the opportunity to submit comments regarding this BZA case. They could have submitted them to Petra Reynolds, our town clerk. So that's just general information about our meeting. Now I would like to introduce the board members who will hear the case today. And board members, as I introduce you, do you say present, please? Wendy Kulik.
Present.
Frank Cassidy.
Present.
Scott Parker.
Present.
Jay Lewis.
Present.
Morris Hannon.
Present.
Ben Farabee.
Present.
And myself, Ron Hacker, present. Staff members who are also present are John Taylor Jr. and Joe Wilson, attorney for the BZA. For your information, our case rulings from this and any other BZA meetings are available for public review and inspection during normal business hours at the town hall. Since we're doing this on Zoom, we'll be careful to have only one person talking at a time so everyone can hear it. So if it's a speech, if no one's speaking, go ahead and speak. Otherwise, raise your hand to know that you'd like to speak when someone's through. At this time, I'd like to ask those of the public that are present in the body today if you're familiar with the procedures, the workings of the BZA. And I'm doing this because if everyone is familiar with it, I will skip the comprehensive explanation of the BZA workings. Is there anyone that would like to hear the full BZA explanation of how the committee works? All right, if that's not necessary, we will at this time start our meeting with some exact information. First of all, because today's hearing is a public fact-finding meeting, we're in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act and South Carolina Code 62970. Because this is a quasi-judicial body, anything said in this meeting must be complete, true, and accurate. All the information provided by the BZA is considered evidence, and this board may certify contempt of circuit court if any false statements are made either in writing or orally. Because of this, each person who wishes to address the board will be sworn in. In order to expedite the procedure, those wishing to speak, I'd like you to raise your hand, and our attorney, Mr. Wilson, will recognize the people and administer the oath. Joe?
Okay. Please raise your right hand. And do you affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. I shall now call case BZA 20-000008 at 24 Blue Heron Pond Road. Staff will present facts pertinent to the case. I shall then call the applicant to address the case. The applicant will state their name, the current address for the record before presenting testimony. I will then ask for all those speaking either in support, followed by those against the case. If there are anyone, they shall follow the same procedures of identifying themselves and are limited to 2 minutes for each person, and the applicant has another 2 minutes for rebuttal. At this time, I'd like to ask John Taylor to give the staff's review. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Mr. Hacker. Today's case, BZA 20-000008, is a variance request, and this is for the reduction of the required 30-foot rear yard setback for approximately 275 square feet encroachment. This proposed plans include a rear pool addition. Are you all able to see my screen? I just want to make sure before I continue.
I can see it, John.
You
Awesome.
just went to the property sites screen.
Awesome. So the applicant is being represented by the architect, Mr. Chad McDonald, property owners, William Schuling and Karen Schuling, for this particular variance request. The subject property is 24 Blue Heron Pond, TMS number 265-02-00-013. Property is zoned R1, as you can see on the zoning map, and is adjacent to marsh critical area at the rear of the property. All of the surrounding properties are also R1, adjacent to the east and west of the subject property. I'm going to go through just a few areas of the property. Please note that the property is approximately 24,000 square feet in size, and it's part of the undeveloped lands within Kiowa. Subject property is also under the purview of the Architectural Review Board. Here you see just the rear of the property. This is the existing deck of the subject property that sits at the rear. Adjacent properties is pretty well screened from the properties on both sides of the at the adjacent sites. It does sit back abut the marsh as noted where the critical area spawns, and so that's the reasoning for today's variance request. The ordinance does define setback as a required minimum distance from a lot line or the street right of way, or in this case, an OCRM critical line that establishes an area within a structure that shall be erected. The applicant's plans does reconfigure the rear deck and add a pool within the existing deck that totals approximately 407 square feet in size. And the area that currently sits beyond the setback is approximately 340 square feet, which the proposed plans reduce that amount to approximately 275 square feet for today's request. The Architectural Review Board has reviewed this variance review, and they have granted approval, and quote, stating that the variance to add a pool and increase the height of the portion of deck is the depth and overall area of the encroachment. Additionally, the reduction of the existing deck will provide more room between the improvement and the OCRM critical line. And as this was requested by the board at the time of the previous variance request. And so staff did take a visit on the site to capture the understanding. And from that, the following staff findings have been outlined as part of your reading material. I will go over just a few highlights of that and let me know if you have any particular questions about any of those specific criteria. Regarding criteria A, which is the exceptional and extraordinary conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property, staff did find that there may be extraordinary and exceptional conditions, and that's based on the required setbacks and the OCRM critical line at the rear of the property. The applicant did state in their letter of intent that this existing deck and stairs that we're proposing to remove to construct the proposed pool and deck do in fact extend further than what's being proposed by several feet. And we felt that this reduction in the setback incursion is greater conformance with the comprehensive plan, end quote. Criteria B speaks to not generally applying to other property in the vicinity. Staff says as well that this condition may be unique to the subject property. The applicant shares that, quote, the proposed pool and stair are consistent with the general purpose and intent of the zoning regulations, as the pool and decks are a permissible use. Regarding criteria C, the application of the ordinance to 24 Blue Heron Pond, this would prohibit the construction of the rear deck. The existing structure is beyond the setback, and the proposed structure reduces that amount of encroachment beyond that setback. And also the letter of intent from the applicant state that the proposed use is compatible with and preserves the character and integrity of the adjacent development and the neighbors, as it will actually be a reduction in the current incursion of the rear setback line and the usage that is compatible. They also state that the proposed work has less impact and does not infringe on adjacent development or the character of the neighborhood. And criteria D, the authorization of this variance may not be of substantial detriment is what staff response is pertaining to this particular request. The proposed plans do meet the requirements as far as set lot coverage, which it sits under the required 33% lot coverage for this particular zoning district. It's actually reducing the amount of lot coverage to be about 29.4%. The criteria E, granting of the variance would not allow the establishment of a use not otherwise. This is a permissible use, and the changing of the deck or adding in the pool would not change the use for this particular lot. Criteria F, the BZA may not consider profitability when considering this request. And then criteria G, the need for the variance shall not be the applicant's own actions. The applicant has stated in their letter of intent, the need for the new work will be pulled back further than the existing deck and stairs from the marsh edge. Criteria H, it may not be contrary to the public or neighborhood interests or affect other property in the vicinity. And so with that, staff has noted the Architectural Review Board's approval letter, and what their granting of the approval letter speaks to the nature of the deck being less intrusive over the setback than the existing structure. The final criteria I, granting of the variance may not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan or purposes of the ordinance. As stated before, there is a reduction in the overall impact beyond the setback, and the proposed plans reduce that total primary lot coverage from about 30.5% to 29.4%. I'm going to quote from the applicant's letter of intent, quote, the proposed work, because it is pulling back further from the marsh edge, should reduce the visual impact on the adjacent properties, and the proposed work complies with all other requirements of the applicable zoning ordinance. Additionally, the use is not materially detrimental to the public health, safety, and convenience and welfare. Staff has noted just one condition should you choose to approve this particular request, and that staff suggests that prior to commencing construction, silt fencing should be installed along the critical line and maintained throughout their construction. That concludes my staff review, Mr. Hacker. Are there any particular questions?
Any questions from anyone from the board?
The only question I have, John, is, did you receive any communication? This is Wendy, sorry. Did you receive any communication from any neighbors of 24 Blue Heron Pond, either in favor of or opposed to the variance?
We did not receive any official communication. I had one query just in asking what the particular project was about, but no official letters were submitted in favor or opposition.
Thank you.
John, just a quick historical question. Is this property legally non-conforming because we previously granted it a variance, or because the setback requirements have changed since the original construction?
Because of the essentially both of your premises there would speak to why it's legally non-conforming. The setbacks, because the structure would have been built prior to the setbacks in place, and then also with the granting of the variance from the Architectural Review Board gives it that non-conformity as it being beyond the setback.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, then I would like to hear from Mr. McDonald. And then at this time, I'd like to step forward and state your name and address.
Hello, my name is Chad McDonald. I live at 188 St. Margaret Street in downtown Charleston. Thank you for hearing our request for the variance. We hope you see that that what we're proposing to do would be less invasive than the current conditions, and that we are in compliance with the like allowable uses, and hope you'll look upon our submittal favorably.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. McDonald? Yes, Ben?
Is this going to be a rental?
I don't think so. That really hasn't been I've met with the people that are buying it, and I do not believe so, but I can't swear to that.
I thought it was bought a couple of years ago.
This is the current owners are asking for this variance because there are potential buyers that would like to be able to make this change.
So is it the potential buyers who want the pool, or is it the current owners?
The potential buyer. But
So they aren't even, I don't know, can they, is that a proper request, John? Or Ron?
Yeah, so the applicant or owner, the property owner can make the request. The information that it being for a potential buyer has no bearing on the actual decision of the case. And Joe, you can chime in if you want.
No, I agree with that.
Okay.
John, this is Wendy. Mr. McDonald, when did your clients first learn that they would need a variance?
I think when I think I would have to guess that it was that they knew they needed a variance when the potential buyers asked if they could do what they're asking for. I guess is the right answer.
And just one follow-up to that, if the BZA were not to approve this variance, would your potential buyers go through with the purchase or not? I mean, is this a deal
I
breaker
really
for
don't
them?
know. Since I haven't I really don't know. Either way.
One of the things that I have learned that in the process of putting our house on the market is the real estate people want to know if property, can a pool be built or not? It's something that goes along with a number of potential sales. And I think that's what's happening here. I don't believe that we judge something on whether or not who's buying it. We only judge on what is being presented, and that is, can this variance be done? And that's what we're asking. We're not asking who's buying it.
Right.
Yes, Ben?
Ron, I think it goes to the item F on our list of the facts that I think it's a profitability issue if you put a pool in or not. And it's not for their enjoyment, it's for the new owners, and it's then the profitability of the present owners.
Scott?
It's my understanding that we can't consider profitability in either way in considering
Correct.
whether or not to grant or deny a variance. So I think this line of investigation is not really germane to the question that's in front of us.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And as the attorney for the BZA, I would too. I mean, I understand profitability is not a factor, but I'm not sure that this really falls under that category. I mean, these judgments shouldn't be made based on who owns the house.
Yes, Mr. McDonald?
I mean, we're hoping that you'll agree that by reducing the incursion beyond the setback or increasing the distance from structure to edge of marsh would be better for the island in general. That's what we're hoping you'll agree with.
Any other questions for Mr. McDonald? Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. McDonald. Is there anyone else be speaking for or against this proposed variance? If not, then I think the procedural questioning will be through, and I will close that discussion and ask the board for a vote.
I'd move approval of the variance request.
I
Frank
second it.
Anthony has moved and approved the variance and seconded.
This is Morris Hannon. I second that.
It's been moved and seconded. The
Uh,
floor is open
Are
for
we including
discussion.
the silt fencing?
Pardon me?
Are we including the silt fencing
Mhm.
as requested by John? Prior to the,
Frank, do you want to?
Yeah, I would say
restate
yes.
that? Okay.
okay,
It has been moved to approve the variance, including the silt fencing prior to construction. And it's been seconded. We're open for discussion, comments?
I
Frank?
just have a quick comment. This is Scott Parker. The silt fencing is a great idea, but I went out there today at 12:30 and that silt fence will be underwater.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it shouldn't be done. I'm just making an observation that I was out there today and that water was up to the top.
I think our criteria of saying that is something that the ARB is asking for. And if they think I don't think we have to make a decision of whether that's right or wrong. I think that it's something that they could say that if they want it, they should be able to have it.
Mr. Hecker, I'll just chime in on that briefly. Just as from the staff perspective, when we look at most of the property developed along critical area, that's a requirement in construction. And so it's just a sort of a reassertion from a zoning standpoint that would be done. So granted, the circumstances, as Mr. Parker stated, it's just sort of a procedural thing that, as we've requested in many numerous variance approvals in the past.
John, this is Wendy. From the presentation that that Mr. McDonald made on behalf of the current property owners, were there any of the requirements that we consider with each application that in fact were not met?
Remember, I do not give an official recommendation for each of the criteria, but I do outline whether or not I think that it may or may not meet that particular criteria. And from what I've outlined, the criteria all seem to be in line with what the applicant has provided. I don't know if that answers your question, Miss.
It does. And, you know, I understand that we can't consider profitability. As somebody who lost both cars in Irma because of flooding from the marsh, personally, I think they're crazy. But as long as it meets the requirement, I can't vote against it. That breaks my heart, and I would certainly encourage them to reconsider where they want the pool and the decking to go. I agree with Scott. I was there both yesterday and this morning, right at high tide, and I was astounded at how the water infiltrated right to the edge.
If I can just reiterate one more thing, and this time I'll share my screen so you're able to kind of see this as I talk. The existing deck already sits beyond the setback. And
I understand that.
Okay. So, but just the where the proposed pool is, it still sits within what you see now. So areas that would, based on your visit to the site where that water may be, does not necessarily speak to where this particular pool is being proposed as far as the existing deck.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I just
Okay.
know, you know, what we've dealt with here and what I saw yesterday and today.
There's no further discussion. I will then call the question. All those in favor of the proposal will say yes. Those that are opposed will say no. As I raise your name, you either say yes or no. Wendy Kulik,
Reluctantly, yes.
Frank Cassidy. Did we lose Frank? I don't see him on the.
I think we've lost him.
Scott Parker,
Yes.
Jay Lewis,
Yes.
Morris Hannon,
Yes.
Ben Farabee,
Yes.
Ron Hacker, yes.
Ron,
have
I'm
a-
back.
Frank
Yes.
Cassidy, you vote yes or no? In
I
favor,
vote yes. I had an internet problem there for a second. I
Okay.
disconnected for a bit.
The variance passes unanimously. And I think the main reason is that the meets the criteria of not of, even though the property is non-conforming, it's less non-conforming now that the way the pool will be designed compared to what's there today. Thank you very much. We appreciate the voting. And at this time, I ask John, is there any other business that we have?
No other business. I want to give a few updates, and I'll also let Mr. Prickett, I don't know if you wanted to share any updates as well. One thing that I do note is I sent an email just moments before our meeting in terms of continuing education opportunity. That's on October 2nd. That will be virtual. So we just need you to confirm your attendance with Petra, and then once you do that, we'll send out more information on how to access that particular virtual continuing ed. That's all right now to have for BZA. We will have one case next month as it stands. So I think that date is October 19th. So you can put that on your calendar for October 19th. Mr. Prickett, did you want to share anything?
I just mentioned two things. One is I think you're all aware and should be aware that a property owner has proposed a zoning change in the property that's immediately adjacent to Town Hall on Betsy Harrison. That piece of property lies outside the town, as you know. So the town has no official capacity right now relative to that. But John and the staff, as well as members of council and myself, are following those developments and are active in trying to best understand what the county's position may be there. So it's in motion as we speak. The other thing I'd mention is the town council has agreed to begin to meet starting in October in person, where we will meet in council chambers appropriately distanced and wearing masks except for when we speak. So that's a change. That'll make it a little easier on the people in the community who need to come before council or would like to hear what's going on. They'll be able to come to town, wear a mask, and sit appropriately distanced during the next 3 council meetings in October, November, and December. I think
Dan, quick
Yeah.
question. Actually, quick 2 questions. One, will council be appropriately distanced from each other? Because the last time I watched a town meeting, you guys weren't. And secondly, you know, my experience in when people are wearing masks is there's no trouble understanding what they're saying. So I guess my question is, why would you guys take your masks off if you're speaking?
That's a good question. The answer is, I think for some people who may be watching it, because it'll be zoomed out even though we're meeting in person, it's harder for some people to understand if they don't see our mouths moving. It's hard to understand who's speaking and what they're saying. So it makes it a little easier on them. In terms of the distancing, yeah, there's only going to be 5 of us up on the podium. So we'll have a major seat between us all. So the 5 members of council, including the mayor, will be the only ones up on the podium. Everybody else, city manager, council, and so on, will be seated down more near the audience, Wendy, so we can get spaced.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Will we be
Dan.
doing the meetings that way then as of October?
I don't know, John, have you heard?
I have not confirmed with Stephanie just yet. I will in tune, follow back with everyone once I've had that conversation.
Thank you.
Dan, if you wish to attend, do you need a reservation since space will be limited?
I don't know that, Scott, yet. I'll get you an answer and get back to you. Stephanie Braswell, do you know?
I don't think that we have set up a reservation system for this yet, but that doesn't mean that we won't. It will be live streamed, so there really isn't necessary for attendance.
But an opportunity to get out of the house? Come
Council
on.
chambers does have a occupancy number that's
Right.
posted on the outside of the door, so we obviously wouldn't be able to accommodate any more than that.
And
And that's based
Stephanie,
on our
yes. Yes, it's possible to see, but it's very difficult to express ask questions or express comments virtually.
I understand. Would you like to be one of the first ones to sit in the front row, Wendy?
I don't know. I don't think so right now, Stephanie. We're
I
staying away from people. I've heard about 2 different sets of people here on the island who came down with COVID. One set who's fully recovered, one set who's in the process of recovering. And, I'm just an old person who isn't willing to risk coming down with it.
I understand. Mr. Priggett, I'll get with Stephanie T on that and get you an answer, and John can send it out to the committee.
Thank you, Steph.
You're welcome.
Thank you, John. Wendy, thanks for your questions.
There's no other comments, then I'd like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all so
Thanks,
much.
everybody.